Hello, welcome back to Grad Girl Rambles. I'm Brianna and I'm here to talk about gap year. So when I am talking about a gap year or gap years, I'm not talking about the gap year that people talk about between high school and college. I'm talking about the gap years between undergrad and grad school. I did a podcast episode on Dear Grad Student with Elana and I'll put the link in the description. I think it was a really fun episode to do with Elana, and we were able to talk about why I took 3 years off between undergrad and my doctoral program, and Elana went straight through. And so it's a really nice conversation between the two of us because you get both perspectives. Today I just want to share like why I did it and why I think people should consider it, which, spoiler alert, is kind of like the summary of that podcast episode, but go listen to that. For me, I knew in high school that I was going to go into psychology. I'm not sure that I knew that I would go to grad school because I'm not sure that I really thought about what I could do with a bachelor's in psychology. But once I was in undergrad, I knew I was going to have to get a doctorate to do what I wanted to do. And originally I was going to apply right out of undergrad and just go straight through if I could. The reason I didn't, for a couple reasons. One, there were just like life things happening around the time in my senior year of college that kind of did not allow me to apply to grad school. Just like too many things were going on and I didn't have the mental capacity to put together applications, ask people for letters of recommendation. I couldn't do it. And I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh man, but if I take time off, I'm never gonna go back. That's just not me. I knew I was going back. So I decided I would get some more experience and try to make myself a little more competitive. After undergrad I worked in a Center for Autism on the research side. So I got some research experience. I didn't get much like publishing. I got one book chapter, which great. For some people, using that time off is a good way to like boost your GPA if your undergrad GPA wasn't that great. So like doing a master's program or like a certificate or something just to show like I can do grad level work. Some people do it to get more research experience. I do feel like I got a lot of research, like hands-on research experience in undergrad, so I didn't think I needed that necessarily. I did hope I would get some publications out of the 3 years that I took time off, and I literally got the book chapter was it was actually after I was accepted to my program. So I really didn't even have that as a way to kind of boost my CV. But I was also just tired of being in school. Like when you really think about it, from kindergarten to 12th grade, you're in school for 13 years. And then I was in school for 4 more years at undergrad. And then the thought of doing a 5 to 7 year program after that was honestly draining. And so I wanted to take the time to just like breathe a little bit. And so during those 3 years, yes, I was working. I was able to get a little bit more experience and have more time to kind of know what I wanted out of a graduate program. I think that's the other key, is that I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I wanted a PhD in psychology. Like that's not enough for me, at least, to invest in the time that it would take to go through that program. And so I didn't even know about school psychology in undergrad. And so I probably would have applied immediately to clinical programs because that's just what I knew at the time. And with my undergrad GPA, I was not competitive, which is fine. My undergrad GPA was a 3.3. I got screwed over, honestly, by a requirement to take a programming class. Carnegie Mellon, count your days, because why was I required to take that programming class? That was a mistake. I also made the mistake, this is just a tangent, I thought I was gonna minor in business in undergrad. I took an like Econ 101, Principles of Economics. Almost failed. So close to failing that I almost dropped the class, but I didn't because I wasn't thinking, and so that almost fail also dinged my GPA. So there were a couple classes that I took that just kind of were not in my favor. But anyway, I digress. 3.3 is fine. It's a good GPA, like it's fine, but for these like psychology doctoral programs, especially for clinical, which I would have been considering at the time, baby, it wasn't cutting it. So I did not do additional coursework. I didn't do any masters or any kind of online work, but I was just like, let me just get more experience and just like take a deep breath. The other thing that I think was really important that I mentioned in a previous video about just being a person is that I had been, as like I said, I'd been a student for, what's that, 13 plus 17 years, and that was exhausting. And so being able to be a person for a few years was also really nice, because then I went to grad school and then identified as a student again. So being able to find yourself is, I think, really important before going into grad school. You don't have to, but if you're going in right after undergrad and you've kind of taken a traditional route, you're spending a lot of your 20s in school. And at this point, yes, I spent majority of my 20s in school. And by the time I graduate, I will be 30, which is fine. But I've been a student in my young years. 30s are still young, but like 20s is just like a very specific time. And to spend that time in school identifying as a student was just kind of like, oh, so give yourself a little time to be a person. You also, I was also able to kind of narrow in the focus of what I wanted to do. So I found school psychology. I realized that I didn't want to just work with kids. I wanted to do early childhood. And so at least being able to go into school psychology allowed me to at least focus on just kids. I think, you know, there are some clinical programs that have a very specific, like, you know, this is for pediatric, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't want to work with adults at all. At all. So having to do any kind of like practicum with adults, like, no babes, not for me. And I think I would have really disliked it had I applied straight out of undergrad, gone into a clinical program, did some clinical work with adults, or maybe I would have enjoyed it. I don't know. I just know that wasn't what I wanted, and it's still not what I want. So I'm glad that I gave myself time to think about that, and I think it's working out for me. But I highly suggest taking time off between undergrad and grad school, whether you're going for a master's or a doctorate. It's just, you're going to be spending a lot of time as a student, and I think it's really helpful to give yourself a break, because a lot of the things that I learned from working, like finding balance in like work and personal life, I wasn't able to have super great balance in grad school, but I think I was able to prioritize it a little bit more because I had already had a little bit of a life and I did not want to lose that. So those are my 2 cents, and I don't know, some people think it's the other way. It's like, just get it over with, which is also a mentality to have. Not mine. I'm ready to get it over with now, but I needed that time off. Those 3 years were actually really good for me, and I think that my mental health was able to stay a little bit above water because of that. Anyway, that's where I am with it. What do you think? Did other people take time off, or did you go straight through? I'm very curious to see or hear like what other people's paths were. But yeah, that's me. I am signing off now, and I will catch y'all later.